You just made a decision. But here's the unsettling part. Your brain made it before you did. Neuroscientist David Eagleman calls conscious you a stowaway, riding a ship it never steered. By the end of this video, you'll know why the reasons you give for your choices might be fiction your brain writes after the fact. David Eagleman is a neuroscientist, and his book, Incognito, The Secret Lives of the Brain, spent years on bestseller lists for a reason. It takes everything you assume about your own mind, that you're in charge, that you're one unified you, and takes it apart piece by piece. Today, we're covering the 3 biggest ideas from that book. And idea number 3 is the one that will change how you think about every decision you've ever made. Idea number 1. Almost everything your brain does happens without you. Here's a number that should stop you. Eagleman writes that your brain processes about 11 million bits of information every second. Know how many of those bits you're consciously aware of? About 40. 40 out of 11 million. Think about what that means. Right now, your brain is regulating your heartbeat, balancing your hormones, parsing the shapes of every face in this video, running 1,000 background calculations, and you're aware of none of it. You just get the summary. Picture catching a ball thrown straight at your face. You don't calculate trajectory, wind resistance, timing. Your hand just moves. By the time catch the ball reaches your conscious mind, your arm is already there. The book argues this isn't the exception, it's the rule. Walking, talking, reading a room, falling in love, almost all of it runs on autopilot, deep below awareness. Here's another one Eagleman uses. Right now, each of your eyes is a blind spot, a small patch with no light receptors at all. You never see a hole in your vision because your brain quietly paints in a guess to cover the gap, thousands of times a day, without asking permission. Or think about the last time you drove a familiar route home and arrived with almost no memory of the drive itself. Your brain drove. You just came along for the ride. Eagleman's point isn't that you're broken. It's that consciousness was never meant to run the whole show. It's a tiny newsroom sitting on top of a massive, silent factory, and it only gets the headlines. Here's the twist, though. If so little of your brain is conscious, who's actually driving? That question is where the book gets really interesting. Idea number 2. Your brain isn't one you. It's a team of rivals. Eagleman argues the brain isn't a single decision maker. It's more like a democracy, or on a bad day, a small civil war. Different neural populations, each with their own goals, compete for control of your behavior in real time. Think about the last time you stood in front of a fridge at midnight, arguing with yourself about a slice of cake. One part of your brain, the impulsive, reward-hungry part, wants the cake right now. Another part, slower, more deliberate, is running the math on tomorrow's regret. Neither one is the real you. The book's argument is that you are the argument. The tug-of-war itself is what a decision feels like from the inside. Or think about your alarm clock. One version of you, the night before, sets it for 6 a.m. with the best of intentions. 6 a.m. arrives, and a completely different version of you, groggy, warm, furious at last night's planner, slaps snooze without a second thought. The book's argument is that both of those versions are equally, fully you. There's no fake one. Eagleman points to an old trick. Ulysses, in the Greek myth, knew he couldn't resist the siren song. So he had his crew tie him to the mast before he could even hear it. He didn't trust future Ulysses to make the call. And Eagleman argues we do this constantly, freezing our credit cards in blocks of ice, deleting an ex's number, leaving temptation out of arm's reach, because some part of us already knows another part of us can't be trusted with the wheel. The book points to something else this explains. Why teenagers take more risks than adults. It's not that they're careless people. Eagleman notes that the brain's impulsive, reward-seeking systems mature early, while the deliberate, break-applying systems don't finish developing until your 20s. For years, part of the team of rivals is simply still under construction. That's a strange thought, right? That you're not a single pilot. You're a parliament, and the majority vote just happens to feel like your decision. If this is messing with how you see your own mind a little, good. That's the book doing its job. Eagleman goes even deeper into this in Incognito. The full book is linked below if you want the whole ride. Idea number 3, And this is the one we open with. Your conscious will shows up late. In the 1980s, scientist Benjamin Libet ran an experiment that Eagleman uses to make this point land. He hooked people up to brain scanners and asked them to flick their wrist whenever they felt like it, at a moment of their own free choosing. Here's the unsettling part. The brain activity that triggered the movement started before the person consciously felt like they decided to move. Not a huge gap, a fraction of a second, but real. Eagleman's argument: what you experience as deciding is often more like a press release. The decision gets made in the machinery below, and consciousness receives the announcement, and then takes credit for writing it. The book gives this a name: confabulation. Your brain is a phenomenal storyteller. Split brain patients, people whose two brain hemispheres have been surgically separated, will confidently invent a reason for an action their language center hemisphere didn't even choose. Ask them why they picked up that object, and they won't say, "I don't know." They'll make something up on the spot and believe it completely. Picture standing at a fork in a glowing path, reaching for the left trail, and only a half-second later, a tiny narrator voice in your head pipes up, "I chose left because it looked nicer." You believe it. You're not lying. You just got the story after the choice was already made. Eagleman takes this idea all the way into the courtroom. The legal system assumes one rational decision-maker sits behind every choice a person makes. But if the brain is really a team of rivals, and conscious will shows up after the decision is already rolling, the book argues that blame gets far more complicated than we like to admit. Eagleman suggests the justice system should worry less about punishing a single guilty self and more about which systems in a person's brain need help steering. This is the loop we open with. The reasons you give for your choices: I picked this job because I love the mission. I texted back because I wasn't that busy. Some of those reasons are real. But Eagleman's research suggests some of them are stories built after the fact to make a decision that already happened feel like it made sense. Put the three ideas together, and you get the full picture the book is painting. Almost everything happens outside your awareness. What has happened inside your awareness is the output of competing systems, not one unified you. And even your sense of consciously choosing arrives after the fact, dressed up as the cause. Eagleman isn't arguing you're not real, or that free will is a total illusion. The book is careful about that. What he's arguing is that the you doing the deciding is much bigger, stranger, and less in charge than it feels. The felt sense of a single, always conscious self steering the ship the whole time, that the book suggests is the biggest illusion of all. Most of your mind is working incognito, hidden even from you, running the show while you read the headlines. That's the case David Eagleman builds across Incognito. 3 ideas that quietly rewrite how you think about your own decisions. If you want the full argument, with all the experiments and case studies, the book is linked below. And if this changed how you think about your own mind even a little, that's the whole point of Science Thursday. See you in the next one.